And we're live. Welcome back to the Movie Guys Improvise podcast, MGI. You're listening to the voices of
Chill with Realms.
Jurassic Mark
and Faerhad Targaryen. Last episode, we covered another classic, The Night of the Living Dead. Great film. I definitely recommend it. The gentleman here enjoyed it as well. So if you have not seen this classic, definitely go check it out first. I left 3 links in the description to see it on YouTube. There's the regular, original, unmastered black and white version. Then there's the remastered version, and there's the colored version. So pause our video, watch the movie first, then go ahead and resume our review of the movie. For today's episode, I wanted to go over another comic book superhero film, another Marvel MCU film. We've covered a few on this channel, but this is one of the greatest, ranking like high on my list, I think, of MCU films, not just Marvel and superhero films in general. Black Panther. This movie was a really hot topic in 2018. Not as hot as a topic for the movie that it led up to, which was Avengers Infinity War, but that's an Avengers movie, that's in a league in and of itself. But still, this is no slouch. Black Panther made box office records, $1.3 billion in the month of February 2018. It is the 18th installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it is the first Black Panther movie that's ever been made. There have been countless other superhero films based on other superheroes we've had, even before the MCU. I mean, there were Spider-Man films, there were Batman films, but this is the first ever Black Panther movie there has ever been, and it's part of the MCU. So I remember when I saw the trailer for this movie, like I think it was the teaser trailer, and it hyped me up a lot. I mean, besides the fact that I'm just very engaged with things that roll in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I didn't go and see every single movie in theaters that came out. More and more as the franchise grew bigger and bigger, I did do it more often, but I would have gone to see Black Panther even if it wasn't like part of the MCU, I think. I mean, it is, but I'm just saying that's besides the point. The trailer alone, besides the fact that it's related to the MCU, the trailer, the way they were hyping up the movie is what got me really interested in it. So I've seen the movie many times myself. I saw it twice in theaters when it came out, and I've seen it a ton of times since then. JM, I think you have seen it as well, and you and your wife rank it as probably the best solo flick of the MCU, yeah?
Oh, it's definitely up there. And yeah, we had seen it when it came out in theaters. I hadn't watched it since then before this podcast, but it holds up, definitely.
Definitely. It's definitely a conversation starter as well. There are a lot of things that we can talk about in it, even though the movie is about 3 years old, like its 3rd birthday just passed on February 16th. Ironically, that's also the Weeknd's birthday, which we will get into. The Weeknd is part of the conversation of this movie, and I'll get into that later. But yeah, Realms, you have not yet seen, up until now, you hadn't seen Black Panther. So what were your initial impressions?
Yeah, that was definitely my first time seeing it, and I actually ended up watching it twice because I actually enjoyed it. And I'm glad I didn't watch it when I first had the opportunity to, because it was very bad quality, and the movie definitely deserves a quality watch.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this to you off the record, just about watching movies like off camera, like bad quality in general. I end up just not liking the movie, even if it's a great movie. If like the quality of it is not great, I just, the experience kind of turns me off from it. And it's just a different experience watching it the way it was meant to be seen.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable.
First thing out of the way, I gotta say, one of the reasons I picked Black Panther for the podcast is I've actually had this in mind ever since we reviewed 8 Men Out, the last season of the podcast, because that was a sports film, it was a baseball movie, and I remember Chadwick Boseman. He actually he played Jackie Robinson in a film. I can't recall what the name of the film was.
Oh, 42.
Yeah.
42.
Thank you,
I
Jam.
was wondering how 8 Men Out led you to Black Panther, but that makes sense.
Yeah, so that was right around the time actually I think when he passed away. So ever since then, I was thinking once per season of the podcast anyway, we have covered at least a superhero movie. So I wanted to do for this season at least Black Panther. That's kind of what like led me on into doing it. So I think he was absolutely fantastic in the role as T'Challa. You know, as far as characters and character development goes in this movie, the entire cast I think was pretty great. Even like the director Ryan Coogler, I think he did a phenomenal job. A fun fact for you gentlemen, actually. So the villain, we all know the villain is Killmonger, right? Who amazing job done by none other than Michael B. Jordan. But fun fact, I think I heard somewhere Ryan Coogler initially wanted a different villain. Do you guys remember Kraven the Hunter from Spider-Man, from like the TV show or the comic books?
Vaguely.
Okay. Because I think that's who the director wanted the villain to be originally for Black Panther, but because technically Sony still holds the rights for everything Spider-Man movie stuff,
Mhm.
Disney would have to have gotten permission from Sony to say, hey, we really want to integrate the story. Can we get Kraven the Hunter as the villain here? And of course, we can bring Kraven back in the future, but it seems like Sony wasn't even about it. But that was fine because what they did with the angle they came with Killmonger, I think they told a really, really compelling story. Killmonger in the comics, I don't think he was like of family relation to T'Challa. In this story, though, they were cousins, I think. Killmonger in Dajaka was played by Michael B. Jordan. Nakia was played by Lupita Nyong. I'm sorry if I'm saying her name wrong. I hadn't seen her in many other films before this. I did see 12 Years a Slave, and she was really good in that movie. She was also apparently in Star Wars The Force Awakens. I saw that movie. I'm not big on Star Wars, but she was in that. Did you gentlemen ever see like any of the Star Wars films or like the latest series, the Disney series by any chance?
Oh yeah, I've seen those. I can't really remember what her role was in The Force Awakens, but I definitely saw that movie.
She was I don't remember the name of the character, but she was the little orange alien with the glasses at the bar.
Wait, she was what was her name? Maz Katana?
I don't remember the name of the character, bro. Yeah,
Oh man, I if I had a million guesses, I wouldn't have gotten that right. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. I liked that character though. I thought she was really cute in the Star Wars movies, and like I said, I also saw her in 12 Years a Slave,
I
and
think she
then
was
there's
in that Jordan Peele horror movie, I think. This Is Us, I want to say.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm surprised I didn't even actually recognize her from it, but now that you
Mm,
say it, I remember like from one of the promo pictures.
yeah.
I think Winston Duke was in that movie too, right? He's M'Baku in this movie, but I think he was also one of the main characters in This Is Us. Yeah.
Mm.
I think so. I think he was also in the other one too. What was the other movie that
Oh, Get Out.
yeah.
Yeah, the
He was the
general's lover in this movie was the lead in Get Out.
Yeah. Daniel
yeah.
Kaluuya. I'm sorry if I'm saying
Yeah.
his name wrong, but yeah,
Mm.
he played Wakabi in this movie, and he was also the main character in Get Out, which I haven't seen because, as you gentlemen know, I don't really fuck with horror. That's supposed to be a really good movie too.
Oh, Get Out is great. Yeah, I haven't seen This Is Us, but Get Out is awesome.
Awesome, awesome. So there's also Danae Gurira who plays Okoye, and I recognized her the most from The Walking Dead, Michonne.
Lord of the Rings fans are probably going to recognize Andy Serkis as Claw, who was also Gollum in the Lord of the Rings films.
Oh yeah, and Martin Freeman who played
Yeah,
yeah.
Bilbo in the Hobbit movies.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was gonna say I don't mean to cut you off, Jam, but they
oh
actually had
yeah,
a
no.
nickname in this. They had a nickname in this movie. They were the token white guys.
I was about to make that joke. Yeah, the Tolkien minorities. Yeah, just those two.
Yeah,
That's funny.
with the rest of the cast, there's also Letitia Wright who plays Shuri, the princess,
Mhm.
T'Challa's sister. Winston Duke, like we said, plays M'Baku. Angela Bassett, legendary actress, plays T'Challa's mother, the Queen, Ramonda. Forrest Whitaker plays the elder, Zuri. And like you said, Andy Serkis as Claw, who we last saw in Avengers Age of Ultron. So the interesting thing about this character is he gets a mechanical arm like Bucky, right? But it's not, obviously it's not the same kind of arm. The only thing they have in common is that they're made out of vibranium. But he lost his arm. For those who don't, who may have just been confused, who just saw Black Panther and aren't really keeping up with the rest of the MCU, if you saw Avengers Age of Ultron, you would see in that film, because that's where we last see Claw, Ultron chops his whole arm off, like his whole entire arm, and that's why he has a mechanical arm in this movie.
Yeah, and that character was introduced years before this movie came out. Like, when did Age of Ultron hit theaters? Like 2016 or something? 2015. So yeah, it's just a testament to how far in advance Marvel plans these things out.
Things kind of changed actually with the introduction of Spider-Man, because before 2015, Spider-Man was all Sony. It wasn't until Sony and Disney made a deal to share the Spider-Man character in cinema that they kind of had to change their plans, like rewrote the script a little bit for Civil War to feature Spider-Man, and then in the Avengers movies, that just kind of shifted things around. In fact, before they even made that deal, there were 2 MCU movies a year. It wasn't until Spider-Man Homecoming came out that they made it 3 a year, actually. Very nice observations, gentlemen. So as far as characters go and casting, did you guys have any particular favorite among the cast of characters?
Killmonger.
Same. It was actually him for me and one other character, which I'll get into.
I was going to say Shuri was definitely a standout character for me. Yeah. And I also loved the General Okoye. Yeah, Okoye was another one. But, I also loved M'Baku.
Oh, yeah. M'Baku, I think, was the leader of the Mountain Tribe.
The Mountain Tribe, that's right, yeah.
There was another character who I actually really liked. His name was Njobu, and his role in this movie was short but significant. That's what I would say about it. Played by Sterling K. Brown, who I think is a really good actor. And I was kind of sad to see that he didn't really have much screen time. But I think it would have done the movie a service if the prologue was a little bit longer and not so cut short. We see that prologue, but there's more to it as we see later on in the movie when Azuri starts to explain to T'Challa that he actually has a long-lost cousin, right? But we can get into that a little bit later. So yeah, my 2 favorites are Killmonger and Njobu. So a lot of this movie has to do, I think, with Wakanda and its place in the world, because it's kind of a front. As much of a villain that Claw is, things that he's saying to Agent Ross in the interrogation room is true. Wakanda's putting up a front. They're not a third world country, obviously. They're technically the richest country in the world in the MCU. They don't reveal any of that stuff. You know what I mean? So one of the things about this movie that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more is Wakanda, the country, from the perspective of the citizens, Wakanda. We do get to see like some camera pans of what it's like in the city life, but not so much in the perspective of like someone living in Wakanda as an ordinary person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there are a couple of establishing shots, but we mostly see Wakanda through the point of view of the royals and advisors to the royals, not really from the perspective of ordinary folks.
Yeah, and it's important to see that, of course, because those people are the main characters.
I feel like the closest thing we had to seeing what it's like for, I guess, normal people in that country was just when they went to go pick up
Nakia?
Yeah. When they went to go pick up her and they saw like all the refugees and he had to stop like the trucks and everything, like the people in that area of the country, I think that's the closest thing that we've seen to, I guess, normal people in that country.
So I was thinking about that, and that scene, looking back, confuses me a little bit. Did that even take place in Wakanda? Because first of all, they're using cars, like regular mechanical cars. And as we know, the citizens of Wakanda, they only drive vibranium cars. And secondly, once that mission is done, Okoye says, we're coming home. Like they're in their ship and they're on their way back. They're like, we're coming home. And then we see them enter Wakanda as well. So I thought that
Yeah.
whole entire scene was happening outside of Wakanda.
No, it definitely was outside of Wakanda. But I'm
Yeah.
saying that's the closest thing we've seen to like anybody who's living a normal life outside of the royal people.
It's definitely important to see things in Wakanda from the royals' perspective because they're all the main characters, right? T'Challa the king, Shuri the princess, Okoye the leader of the special forces, et cetera, et cetera. It's important to see their perspectives because they got a lot on their plate, right? With the previous king just passing away and everything else going on in the MCU, right? Like these alien threats and all that stuff. They have a lot of things to think about. So I understand that they have to focus on that. But since they're also establishing how important like the secrecy of Wakanda is, I'm just saying it would have been cool to see more about like, what is life like for like a Wakandan? Do they have a normal 9 to 5 job? Do they have similar jobs to like people outside of it, like in New York? Because New York City is a pretty prominent setting of the MCU. A lot of movies take place there, so it'd be and we do kind of see more of what like a regular life is like outside of that. Obviously, because New York being a regular place, but in comparison, that's basically what I mean. But maybe they'll do that.
I got you.
Yeah.
It could be something they could establish in a future film. I don't really necessarily see them doing that. What they wanted to establish is just the fact that this is how life is here, but not too much of an expanse on it, other than the fact that it's like very Afrofuturistic. Afrofuturism is kind of a theme in films, and Black Panther is one of the biggest ones out there right now, I would say. But Wakanda was not the only setting in this movie. There was also one pretty key scene in South Korea, which was pretty dope as well. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about that scene. Actually, I got to tell you something that really hyped me up about it when they were all walking in. So, did you gentlemen ever get a chance to listen to? This is more of a question for you, Mark. Did you ever listen to the soundtrack of the movie when it came out?
Can't say that I did. It was a nice soundtrack, though.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There were quite a few tracks that I liked a lot. One of which is "Pray for Me" with The Weeknd and Kendrick Lamar. So I was loving that song when it first came out, right around the time this movie came out, and when they were entering the casino area in the back alley of South Korea in Seoul, South Korea, when I was hearing the drums, I'm like, oh, they're gonna play this song, and then the doors open and they're in and they're playing that song with The Weeknd where he's going, I'm always ready for a war again. I swear to God, I was singing along to the lines of that song, even when the characters started talking. I was so into it. I'm not gonna lie. Uh, but yeah, so this movie came out on February 16th, 2018, which was The Weeknd's 28th birthday, right on his 28th birthday that year. And he even has a song called 28. So I can only imagine how huge of a celebration he had that day, that year. Probably was something really cool.
Well, speaking of celebrations, I saw that Tim Hardaway Sr., of all people, got a little shout out at the beginning of the movie, which apparently he really liked.
Oh, yeah? I must
Yeah,
have which
because when the kids in the prologue, when those kids are playing basketball in Oakland, one of them just yells Hardaway, and he was with the Warriors at the time. And
oh
apparently
yeah.
on social media, he said, "Yeah, I loved that. I loved this movie. It was powerful." But yeah, now his kid's an NBA star.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Interesting. Yeah, he did. Yeah, they did do that. I didn't actually catch that. But you're more of a sports dude, James. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm glad that you're able to catch that and point that out. Actually, to mention that. So,
Yeah, fun little shout out.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. As much as the MCU has diverted from our reality, I do appreciate how from time to time they still throw in like pop culture references that are relevant to our reality. But
Yeah, like I remember I think it was Infinity War, after they opened up Wakanda, the general said, "I thought we were going to get a Starbucks or something."
yeah,
Like, yeah.
exactly. There was that, and also by the end of the movie, Shuri says to T'Challa, "When you told me you were taking me to California for the first time, I thought you meant like what was it, Coachella or Disneyland?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that reminds me of Coming to America with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, yeah, wow. That is kind of similar to that, yeah. And now there's also Coming to America. I don't know if they call it Coming to America 2 or if it actually is Coming to America. Yeah. There are some legacy sequels I still haven't caught up with yet. There's that movie, and there's also Bad Boys for Life, which I still haven't seen. I think that came out last year. Yeah.
Oh, you got to see that.
I do got to see that. But I do want to talk to you guys a little bit more about the themes that go on in this movie. I remember back when it came out, this movie, there were articles that talked about how culturally relevant it kind of was in terms of how the movie kind of hints at how in real life there's some tension between Africans and African Americans, which is kind of shadowed by the conflict between T'Challa and his cousin, that's Killmonger. The way this movie treats the whole outsiders thing, like nobody's really allowed inside. It's Wakandans, and then like if you're not Wakandan, you're an outsider, right?
Yeah.
I think the movie it doesn't try to make you think like what's right and what's wrong. I think we can agree, right, that it was wrong of them to kind of hide who they really were from the rest of the world. Or do you disagree? I mean, if you guys feel differently, then feel free to talk about that.
I mean, I can understand that they didn't want other people to come in and affect what they had going on.
Well, but they didn't come to the aid of other people who could have used their help.
Yeah. What Realms is saying is kind of what Wakabi was saying. Like when T'Challa became king and they had their first meeting, or what do you call press meeting or something, cabinet meeting. I don't know what they call it, but
probably a cabinet meeting or something like that.
Yeah. I mean that sounds presidential, but he's a king. But you know what I mean. Yeah.
Small council.
The small council. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, Jurassic Mark.
You're welcome, Mr. Targaryen.
Oh man. So what Wakabi was telling T'Challa at their small council meeting was, if we invite or help out other countries, if we let them in, then we let their other problems in, and that's gonna drag Wakanda down. That's kind of what he was arguing, and that is what was making T'Challa think. He didn't straight up disagree with that at the time, but he was still kind of on board with the whole keeping outsiders out sort of thing. Since Killmonger is our favorite in this movie, I think this is a movie example where the villain is not necessarily wrong about their point. It's just the villain is just kind of evil. That's the problem. But I can't say that Killmonger was completely wrong about the things that he was saying. Wakanda is the most advanced country in the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They have technology that could save so many poor people all suffering all around the world. That's what Killmonger was saying. There are 2 billion Black people suffering every single day at the hands of society in these other countries. You have all this technology. Why aren't you helping them? And there are a few lines in this movie that I have to repeat just because they were some of my favorite. Number 1, Killmonger's introduction, not when he was a child, when they introduced him as like an adult, as the villain. And this was the part where he says to the museum expert or the museum specialist, he goes, "How do you think your ancestors got these? Do you think they paid a fair price, or did they take it like they took everything else?" Now, he's an evil dude, so he's gonna do what he's gonna do, but that was a pretty badass line. And how can you argue with that?
Well, there have been real conversations about that, both before and after the movie came out. The movie called more attention to it. But yeah, right now, the British Museum is grappling with the fact that it plundered a lot of its main attractions, without the consent of the countries it took them from. So there's been a movement in some museums, at least recently, to repatriate some of those stolen artifacts.
Well, they should. Why shouldn't they do that? Just because it's thousands of years in the past doesn't entirely make it okay. If you have the ability, if you have the manpower to rectify some of it, why don't you? I don't mean you, JM. I just mean
Oh.
obviously.
Yeah,
I mean like.
don't put me on the spot, man.
Damn it,
I mean,
Mark.
Oh god.
You gotta fix everything, man.
Oh god. I caused colonialism. Oh jeez. Okay. Oof.
they, they did call Ross a colonizer. So, but no,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I kid, I kid. I just mean
No,
to the
yeah.
powers that be. You know, if you have the power to make things better for the less fortunate, why don't you do it? What do you lose by doing that? In the big picture of things, what do you really lose by doing that?
They were probably just
I
more
remember
what
after this movie. Oh,
my bad. It was like they're probably just more concerned about the fact that, everything is a certain way that it is right now, and they were just worried they would lose what they had, like in some sort of way.
I was just gonna say, I remember when this movie came out, there was a big Team Killmonger hashtag going around. A lot of people apparently sided with him when this movie was released.
When T'Challa meets Killmonger for the first time in the throne room, right? Like that's when they're face to face for the first time. I can understand why there's animosity between the two, but I don't understand from everything so far why T'Challa would want to kill him. He walks up to Killmonger and he says, "The only reason I don't kill you where you stand is because I know who you are." But I'm thinking in my head right now, like, up until now, what did Killmonger do to T'Challa that was that offensive? You know, why did he say that he would want to kill him at that point?
Well, for one thing, he helped an enemy of the country escape, and he also shot him.
Yeah.
Well, I guess he did help him escape, but he didn't help him escape because of like he was trying to save him. He helped him escape so that he could kill him himself. We see that later, and I would think that that Wakabi would say that. Wakabi would say that. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. When Shuri calls T'Challa, they say you have to come here now. There's a man at the border. Well, actually, she doesn't say this to T'Challa, but I'm sure the message goes to T'Challa that there's a man at the border of Wakanda claiming to have killed Claw. So he was taken away from T'Challa just so he could kill him himself. It's not like he was coming back for revenge or anything. He was doing T'Challa's dirty work for him, you know? Is that is that really what it was? Because if that's the only thing, then I don't know how that's offensive enough of a crime for T'Challa to want to kill him. Or maybe I'm not being harsh enough. I don't know.
I don't know if it warrants that much animosity, unless maybe he was upset with the fact that this guy just came out of nowhere and handled something that he took personally himself and wanted to take care of himself.
Yeah, that could be it. And it just happened the day or the day before, so that could be it. Yeah, I suppose that's fair. But I'm wondering why T'Challa gave up so easily. Like, yeah, Killmonger shot him, knocked him on his ass, but did that really take him out of it so much that he wasn't able to get up and run after the van? Right before this, we had the whole scene, the night scene of South Korea where they went on a chase of Claw. He couldn't conjure up the energy to chase Killmonger. I feel like he kind of gave up too easily at that point.
I feel like he was shooting at him with like regular bullets, and I think he switched over to something that was more suited to the Black Panther armor. So it probably did a lot more damage than it looked like.
Yeah, it was a weapon that could take down vibranium, which is what the Black Panther suit is made out of. But the thing is, Claw's arm cannon was also made out of vibranium, and it dealt some damage to T'Challa. We saw that right as T'Challa was walking up to him once he was capitulated, but it wasn't enough to stop him. So I just don't know if like one shot would be enough to make T'Challa give up, or not have send reinforcements or something. He just kind of gets away,
He must have had the extra juice on it, and then plus he was kind of stunned by the fact of what he had on his neck.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. He was.
That could have been a part of it too. Trying to figure out what's what. Like, what? Who the hell is this? What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, probably took him out of his element emotionally as well. But
For a loop.
Yes, especially seeing like early in the movie, he's definitely prone to getting stunned because when he saw
Nakia,
Nakia, when he saw her, he froze like they said that he was gonna freeze.
Yeah, he did. Damn. Well, moving more, like we could talk for a while about Killmonger. Actually, I gotta say one of the things about the movie that I didn't like, and like I don't think this movie is perfect. There are things about it that I didn't like. One of them just being the fact that Killmonger, in my opinion, has been one of the best villains of this entire mega franchise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and to kill him off is just, I mean, it didn't take away from the story, but I just wish personally that they didn't kill him off so quickly, because the last time we saw T'Challa, which was the first time we saw T'Challa in Captain America: Civil War, which I hated, by the way, he didn't let Zemo kill himself. He wanted Zemo to atone for his crimes. And I feel like Killmonger should have been, it was a more emotional fight for him. That's his cousin, that's his blood. So even though Killmonger wants to die, he has a lot of good lines in this movie. Another one is like, he says, "Why do you want to save me? Just so you could lock me up? No, just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors who knew death was better than bondage." That was a deep line. It was a really deep line, but T'Challa could have still stopped him and could have saved him, but gives him his wish, which is to die. And I kind of wish he didn't let Killmonger die.
Yeah, he's another character that I wish wouldn't have, died, but it's actually been kind of a little bit of a joke about Michael B. Anthony's characters dying in movies, because he's leading the role for Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, and I was seeing in the comments people were like, "Yo, I can't take seeing this man die another time. He better not die in this movie," because he died in Black Panther. He died in Fruitvale Station. It's one I can think of off the top of my head.
I mean, that's not your fault, really, because it's an old movie. But I didn't see that, and I really wanted to see that. So now I know he dies in that.
Spoiler.
Oh,
yeah.
No worries.
It's not your fault though, because it's a really old movie. I should have seen it by now. But yeah, he also, I mean,
what is he like, Sean Bean? Yeah, like there are some actors who just always die in movies. Like Jared Harris is another one who comes to mind. But
damn, my bad about Fruitvale. Like I didn't know him dying was a spoiler for that movie.
No, it's not. I'm half joking. It's not really a spoiler because it's an old movie. Okay. So, but if you really feel that bad, I can return the favor. So, during the Mighty Joe Young episode, I mentioned to you guys in passing. I mentioned to you guys the TV show The Wire, which in my opinion is it's the best TV show I've ever seen, and that's one of the youngest roles Michael B. Jordan has ever done, and he dies in that show as well. He's only in season 1. There are 5 seasons of the show. He was still really good there as well.
Damn, I still gotta watch that too. Like, yeah, I always hear good things about that series.
So I definitely highly recommend that to you guys.
Well, now you spoiled it. Nah, I don't. No, I'm just
it's half joking, but I was saying, like, return the favor for spoiling Fruitvale Station, etc., etc. But yeah. So a little more on Killmonger, and also M'Baku is relevant to this conversation I want to have with you guys, which is the fight for the crown. When they were at the waterfall area where they decided who's going to be the next Black Panther, depending on who challenges T'Challa, it was a cool scene to watch. Some people criticize the CGI about how the people standing on the mountainsides, it looked kind of copy paste and fake. It didn't really bother me as far as the CGI goes. Like, that didn't bother me. There was one CGI element of this movie that did bother me, and that's toward the end. I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Oh, are we talking about the rhinos?
No, not even the rhinos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the rounds were dope too. But yeah, as far as the fight for the crown goes, like I said, it was cool to watch. But are there any countries around the world who like that's how they decide their leader, which is like fighting for the crown, like either fighting until like you KO or fighting to the death? Is that just a thing created in the Marvel comics for Wakanda, or is that actually a thing in real life as well? I'm asking because I honestly don't know.
It seems mythic, which I think is what they were going for. You know, it seems like something lifted out of a fantasy series or an old story passed down through oral tradition. I don't know if that's ever actually been a system for determining the head of state, but maybe, you know.
Something to consider for the future.
Yeah, there you go.
Let me stop.
So
Elections by the knife.
Imagine Trump and Biden.
God. Oh man.
Oh my God, Realms. But this is part of the reason why I was mentioning earlier about how I would have liked to see more of Wakanda from the perspective of the average Wakandan or the typical Wakandan, only because we didn't really get to see the Wakandan citizens' reaction to like the fight between M'Baku and T'Challa, the fact that T'Challa officially becomes crowned king. We didn't see like how Wakandans reacted to that, like, oh, this is the new king. We also didn't see much of a reaction to the next fight for the crown when Killmonger shows up and he challenges T'Challa that day, and they go back to the the waterfall to fight. We didn't really see Wakandan public reaction to this new dark evil king on the throne, you know? And that's another reason why I would have liked to have seen how are the citizens reacting to what's going on in power of the country.
For real. Like damn, T'Challa gone already? He was there a hot minute, he gone already.
It would have been nice sociological storytelling, which was something Game of Thrones actually did really well back when that show was really, really good, because they would show you, you know, how the death of one king and the ascent of another one would affect ordinary people in their day-to-day lives. And I guess there just wasn't time for that here. Like, it sounds to me like what you're describing might work well if this was a mini series, but you know, they only had like what, 2 hours and 10 minutes to work with.
Yeah, I understand that the movie would have been a little bit longer if they did that, but I don't think it would have hurt. If this movie was if it had a little longer of a runtime, maybe like another 20 minutes or so, I don't think it would have made the movie worse.
It probably happened way too fast for them to even realize T'Challa even lost the throne anyway.
Yeah.
But
because as soon as he got the Black Panther powers, like he was pretty much healed again quick.
He was, but like, but I think the people of the country, like he's the king. He's responsible for the lives of everybody there. He even says when Killmonger's arguing with him, he said, "Isn't Africa the cradle of mankind? Aren't all people your people?" And T'Challa responds by saying, "I am not the king of the whole world. I am the king of Wakanda." So he's fully aware of what his responsibility is as king, with all the people he has to care for and protect. So I think it would be important to see how are citizens reacting to what is going on in the country. Even though everything's happening so fast, all the more reason that it's reason to freak out about what is the status of who's in power in this country.
Yeah.
There's not much, I guess, to complain about because this is overall it's a pretty great movie. I mean, the other things I guess that did kind of bother me a little bit is the pacing. When T'Challa found out, when he confronted Zuri about Killmonger, saying that he saw a man who helped Claw escape wearing a ring identical to the one I have, and then Zuri confesses and tells him about how Uncle Njobu, who was murdered by his father and left the child behind, who, as T'Challa described, is a monster of their own making. I would say the pacing there was like, he's a little bit depressed about the news he found out, but Nakia is there, like kind of consoling him. And then he gets a phone call to come and meet Killmonger. The pacing there, I feel like it was a little bit too, like it happened a little bit too quick, I would say, if that makes sense. But besides that, my other big gripe would be how the movie kind of opened up. It felt a little too typical as not just a superhero movie, but an MCU film. And I say that only because not only is Black Panther, this is the first of what's going to be a series or a franchise of Black Panther movies. This is also the 18th installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it's part of an ongoing story. I understand that, but I feel like because of that, the structuring of the movie suffers a little bit of what's typical in a superhero movie. I guess the script found it necessary to introduce Nakia through like a opening action sequence. And it's fine if they wanted to do that, but that action sequence did not have much bearing in the story of the film. If they needed to have an opening with like an action sequence, here's how I would have done it, and it would have made the movie better for me simply because I like Sterling Brown so much as a actor. The prologue where it's revealed that Njobu betrayed T'Chaka, the king at the time, right? We see that, then we get to the present day. But later on in the movie, as I was describing, when Zuri was telling T'Challa the story of how Njobu died, we see that there was more to that prologue. Njobu felt betrayed by Zuri himself and tried to shoot him, but T'Chaka stops him and then kills him. That, I felt like everything happened a little bit too fast, and a scene like that, that's so important. Like the most important thing that happened there is Njobu died. What could have happened alternatively would be if they expanded upon that prologue. And I know that would have made the movie, it would have made the movie longer, but it also would have kind of bloated the actual story they wanted to tell, putting more emphasis on the prologue. How I would have done it would be focus on what's going on there in 1992 with Njobu and T'Chaka, because we see that Zuri is under an act. Zuri is making Njobu think that he's an African American, not a Wakandan. Njobu finds out on the spot that Zuri is also Wakandan all this time, and it makes me think, damn, this means that T'Chaka did not trust his own brother to leave Wakanda on his own. He didn't even tell his own brother that he's sending another spy. The prince, Njobu was the prince. So what could have happened, this is what I would propose for the movie. I would propose if the movie had to open up with an action sequence, they could have had Njobu attempt to go at Zuri's life. T'Chaka stops him, and then a fight scene ensues between Njobu and T'Chaka, brother versus brother, right there in their apartment, which ends, unfortunately, with T'Chaka taking excessive force and taking Njobu's life. And I think brother versus brother would mirror the ending of this movie, which is cousin versus cousin, Killmonger versus T'Challa. I would have liked that better if they had to open up with an action sequence, doing that and focusing more so on the prologue rather than having a short prologue and then opening up with an action sequence that doesn't have much bearing on the story and finding a different way to introduce Nakia. Does that make sense? I know I ranted for a while, and I don't blame you guys if you fell asleep during my rant, but I'm just like, if you guys were able to get it, like, do you get what I'm saying? If not, I can try to break it down further.
What year is it? No, I'm kidding. It makes sense. Somebody's got to put this guy in touch with Kevin Feige.
Oh, man. I can't tell if you're sarcastic, man, but
No. It makes sense, and I do think the backstory could have stood to be expanded upon further. And you were right earlier when you said a couple extra minutes added to the movie's runtime probably wouldn't have put a damper on anyone's enjoyment of the film.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, It was an important plot point how Njobu fell in love with an African American woman, right? Like a Black American woman. We never even see that character. Yeah. We never even see Killmonger's mother. We never really know much about what happens to Killmonger as a little boy, other than the fact that he probably becomes a victim of the system, however it works in America, in Oakland. I think that's where it was. So
I agree with you that they could have expanded more on that. The only thing is, I do think that the beginning did like show a little bit of significance because it's essentially showing what Killmonger is fighting for, it's showing that contrast of, the people that are out there struggling, that could be using some help.
Of course, yeah, I agree with that 100%. But
Yeah.
what I was suggesting to cut out was the action sequence with Nakia. Where they're smuggling girls like outside, like somewhere else in Africa. That didn't really have anything to do with the story. That was just a way to introduce Nakia. That's what I'm saying. They should have changed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Did you think I was talking about like an earlier Killmonger scene? All the Killmonger scenes were great. I wasn't saying to change any of those.
No, definitely not the Killmonger scene.
Yeah. No.
I would not agree with anything that cuts out Killmonger.
No. If anything, there was not enough Killmonger in this movie. After his first scene in the museum, we don't see him again for a while, right? We don't see him again until he comes to fake rescue Claw, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The first scene with Nakia really kind of just felt like filler in this movie, as much as I hate to say it. So
if they found some sort of way to keep him alive, I would have been kind of hoping he would be the next person to take over as Black Panther and just like change up his attitude or something.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been cool.
Which begs the question, what does Marvel do now? I know I'd heard like that they were going to have Shuri assume the mantle of Black Panther, but you have to wonder how they're going to handle the sequel without Chadwick Boseman.
True.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up with you guys. Actually, it's definitely important to the legacy of the first Black Panther movie, right? When I put this on, I watched this before, I think when it was on Netflix, but when I saw it to prepare for the podcast, it was the first time since Chadwick Boseman passed away that I saw it on Disney Plus. And when I started it up, the Marvel Studios logo, which usually I'm annoyed at because of how much not because of how long it is, but how like they find it necessary to put in clips of the movies in it instead of like pages of the comic books, which I thought was cooler, honestly. They switched it up. I don't know if you guys noticed, but during the Marvel Studios logo presentation, they exclusively had clips of Chadwick Boseman.
I did see that, yeah.
I will say that the official word from Disney is that they are not going to recast Chadwick Boseman. They don't think it's right. And they're going to write the story off without T'Challa as the character. So that like I've struggled about like thinking about what is the right thing to do as an enthusiast, as a moviegoer, right? As an audience member, I've struggled with thinking what is the right thing to do, because let's say this happened to a different character. I don't want to play with the what if death scenarios, but let's just say still, like, what if, and God forbid this happens, Tom Holland, who plays Peter Parker, Spider-Man, let's say he gets into, like, he goes bungee jumping, an accident happens, and he's in a coma for a while. But
Tom Holland, do not go bungee jumping. Do not do it.
Exactly, don't do it. But if something happened to him and he wasn't able to act for a while, but they have a movie schedule going, and he's playing Spider-Man, do you really think they would say, no, we're not going to replace Tom Holland, we're going to retire the Peter Parker character? Do you think they would do that, or would they recast him? What do you guys think?
Not too sure. I feel like it would depend on how much the public influences, but at the same time, I feel like they probably would, because of how many times Spider-Man has been redone.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
well, we know from the Star Wars sequels that Disney isn't always opposed to digitally recreating actors who've died. Like in a couple of the new Star Wars movies, they had either a digital or a spliced in Carrie Fisher after she had passed away. And Rogue One had an all CG Peter Cushing, who was the actor who played Grand Moff Tarkin in the original Star Wars, and he had been dead for a while. I'm honestly not sure if I'm completely comfortable with that, because you're taking the likeness of a dead person and having them interact with live actors. Yeah. But yeah, that's something Disney's done before. I'm just pretty relieved that they've said they're not going to try to do that sort of thing with Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah. I was about to say. I'm glad you mentioned that. They already confirmed that they're not going to do that. And on the flip side of things, they have like even before Disney owned Marvel, like they have been doing well. Not before, it was kind of in the transition from the very first installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They have been doing recasting. Terrence Howard played Rhodey in Iron Man. The second Iron Man film, he's recast with Don Cheadle. They've already been doing recasting. Anthony Mackie, who plays Falcon. Side note, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is pretty good. I haven't seen episode 3, which came out today, but if y'all got Disney Plus, I'd recommend that as well. Anthony Mackie has had a few things to say about the Black Panther franchise. One of the comments he made last year, I think, was he found it racist how the only time there was an entire black cast and crew for a Marvel movie was Black Panther, because apparently it's quote unquote that black Marvel movie. But for any other, he mentioned that like he's been involved in several MCU movies, right? Yeah. But every time there's like a costume designer or like a casting director or etc., any part of the crew, like that, he's only noticed that for a Black Panther, as if like for a black film, because Black Panther is also a black film, like that's apparently the only time a black person is the best person for the job, which isn't really fair. You could be black or brown or any race and still be the best person for a job in a film that doesn't have to do, for a superhero film that doesn't have to do with race. So that's one thing that he said last year. Another thing that he said recently, and more relevant to the conversation we're having, is that he said it wouldn't be right to have Chadwick Boseman replaced. Black Panther T'Challa cannot be played by anyone else. And I think fans are a little bit divided about that, honestly, because what would Chadwick Boseman have wanted? Like, he passed away, rest in peace and rest in power, from colon cancer. He was probably sick for a while. What would he want? Would he want someone else to take the mantle, or would he want the character to retire with his passing? I don't know the whole story behind it, but like apparently Denzel Washington, who's a legendary actor, one of the greatest actors of all time, kind of somehow helped him get the role of T'Challa in the MCU. So I feel like it would be a pretty amazing send-off if they recast T'Challa as John David Washington, who is Denzel's son, who's also a really good actor. I saw him in BlacKkKlansman. He was really good in that. And he was also in a movie called Tenet, which is Christopher Nolan's latest movie. And there was a lot of controversy behind that in terms of it being released in theaters and whatnot.
I mean, I can't say he would be mad about that idea, because he did say himself, there is no Black Panther without Denzel Washington. So it's got to be either his son or Denzel himself. But no, I feel like he would probably want it to go on, but
yeah,
I don't know. We're dealing with a lot of people,
and
a lot of opinions, so it's still hard to make a call on.
Maybe they should leave it up to the fans. Have fans who love the character and loved the actor who portrayed him vote on what the best thing to do is. I think that's what Marvel Studios, that's what Kevin Feige should be asking themselves. What would Chadwick Boseman want? What would he have wanted? That's the most important thing right there, in my opinion.
I got a question.
What's up?
It's semi piggybacking off of like the recasting conversation.
Okay.
Now, Killmonger, if you could imagine another person playing that role, who would it be? Like, could you imagine anybody else playing it? Because I personally have somebody in mind.
I do. Yeah, you go first, Browns.
Okay. I could picture. All right, we're gonna say anybody dead or alive. I could picture Tupac doing it.
Whoa, that's actually a really good choice. Oh man. Wow. Okay, your choice kind of beats mine, even though I have a good choice too. I was gonna say Trevante Rhodes, who was in Bird Box, and he was also in Moonlight, and he was great in both of those movies.
Oh man, I can't remember who that was, and I saw that movie too. I'm gonna have to look it up.
Al Rogers and we reviewed Bird Box on the first season of this podcast, so if y'all haven't seen that, I recommend both movies to you guys, but yeah. So
Okay, I see who you're talking about. Yeah, I can see him doing it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe
Although
yeah.
I don't know, I could picture him more as a Black Panther than a Killmonger.
He's too brawlic for Black Panther, man. Like,
You think so?
yeah, I mean, Killmonger was clearly way more brolic than T'Challa, right? I don't think T'Challa was meant to be like a huge guy. He was supposed to be like lean and in really good shape, but not too brolic.
I'm going off more of like personality than
Yeah, well, personality-wise, like
his
going by
body
the
shape.
actor's personality, I agree with you there. Going by the actor's personality, yeah, Trevante would make a good T'Challa as well.
Plus, I looked him up and I'm like pictures of him like modeling and smiling, like so.
Yeah,
Naturally, you're gonna think good guy.
yeah. So,
Mark, did you have anybody in mind?
For a Killmonger, um, I know he was in talks to play T'Challa in the 90s, but I could actually see Wesley Snipes as
Ooh.
Killmonger. Because yeah, you probably learned about this in your research, FT. But yeah, there was talk about making a Black Panther movie in the 90s starring Wesley Snipes.
Yeah,
But I could actually see him doing pretty well as Killmonger.
that
You
would be
know,
interesting.
because hey, he nailed those Blade movies.
yep.
Facts.
I did read about that, JM, actually, yeah, about how like he wanted to get Black Panther going and started in the 90s. And Marvel met with him a few times, I think, about rebooting Blade into the MCU. But eventually that role went to Mahershala Ali. But maybe Snipes will be on as a consultant or involved with Marvel in some other way. We'll see.
Maybe. We're also supposed to be getting a Disney Plus series about Wakanda, so
Maybe. Anyway, so one last thing I want to mention about Killmonger before we go into closing statements and ratings. With Endgame introducing time travel and branching realities and everything, and WandaVision kind of teasing the multiverse.
Oh wait, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, it's good. And the new Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, also kind of teasing multiverse relations. And of course, the next Doctor Strange movie titled Multiverse of Madness, subtitled Multiverse of Madness. With all of this multiverse shenanigans going on with the MCU, there is also a rumor that Disney is going to bring back Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger as the new Black Panther training Shuri. So that would be interesting. Yeah, so
Ooh.
one little thing I wanted to throw out there, but
That'd be cool.
it's just a rumor. Don't get too excited.
Ooh.
But besides that, with just going into closing statements, I like Black Panther a lot. My mom likes it a lot too. All my friends really like it. As far as the ranking goes in the MCU, it's not my favorite solo MCU movie, but it's, I think, pretty highly of it regardless in terms of what there has been an output with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and comic book movies in general. So do you gentlemen have any closing statements you want to say before we go into ratings?
I feel like a little bit of a hypocrite because I defended the CG in the Monkey King, but I'll admit, yeah, some of the computer effects in this film were a little distracting. I think the difference is in the Monkey King film, they weren't going for realism, whereas here they were. So when, we looked at an obviously digital sunset, it was kind of distracting. But that's really just a minor nitpick, and from what I've read, it seems like the animators weren't given as much time as they would have liked to sort of get the effects done.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I did talk about CGI earlier on in this podcast, and I get what you mean because some of the green screens do like seem pretty obvious. I didn't let it bother me though, or for the most part, even with like the other world sequences when he took the elixir and was able to see his father as a panther.
Oh, he was in some kind of state. Yeah, I don't remember what it was called, but yeah.
A different zone. But that was one of my favorite scenes actually when he talks back to his father and says, "All of you are wrong for turning your back on the rest of the world." Great performance by Chadwick. But yeah, the only part of the CGI that kind of bothered me was right at the end when Killmonger and Black Panther were fighting each other. Like they fall into like the subway tunnel or the mountain tunnel.
Yeah,
You know, and
yeah.
Yeah.
it really kind of reminded me of Spider-Man 3 with Spider-Man and Venom fighting each other at night, you know, at the very end of that movie
Yeah.
too.
I can
That
see that. I can see that.
um
Yeah. I think with that scene, it would be hard to film it in a way that keeps it grounded because you got two grown men like fighting as they fall several hundred feet.
yeah.
And in the real world, you're never going to see anything like that. So the audience doesn't really have a frame of reference.
hmm hmm You make a good point. I'm just saying, like, because I've seen something like this CGI wise before in a superhero movie. That's what I immediately thought of when I saw that.
Oh, and make no mistake, like this is a minor nitpick on my part. I enjoyed the movie very much. This didn't really bother me a lot. It's just something I
Yeah,
noticed.
yeah. It's a nitpick. It's a minor complaint.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
understand
yeah.
that. Yeah. The
Little
Other than
quibble.
that, the third act was quite solid. In terms of like the war that goes on, Wakandans were kind of fighting each other. There was so much unnecessary death. It would have been interesting, like how you saw Game of Thrones. You remember Battle of the Bastards, where Jon Snow initially challenges Ramsay on a one-on-one. He says, "You against me. No one else has to die." I think it would have also been cool if T'Challa actually said, or if Killmonger actually accepted his challenge and said, "Yeah, let's fight here and now," and not necessarily have to have everybody else joining in the fight, because a lot of people unfortunately died fighting each other right then and there.
True.
But it was cool seeing Killmonger in the golden leopard suit. The way he killed one of the special force women, and he had that grin on his face of the kill that he just made. It really reminded me of how Michael B. Jordan himself said that Heath Ledger's Joker was actually one of his influences for the character he created as Killmonger. So, great performance by MBJ as well.
Yeah.
All around great performances.
I actually just wanted to throw out like the one interesting fact about Killmonger's outfit, that they actually modeled it after Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z.
Oh yeah. I was gonna text you guys about that actually, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And it makes sense that you would be the one to say that here, all right?
Yes.
So it turns out that Jordan himself is actually a really huge anime fan, so I think he definitely had some input on what Killmonger's outfit was gonna be like. So
Oh, for sure, for sure.
props to them for doing that too. So yeah, fun fact, Rams, thank you for mentioning that as well. So
No problem.
I think this movie can still be classified as a masterpiece. It's very culturally relevant. It starts a lot of great conversations. But yeah, there are some things about it that I still don't like. Even though I do think very highly of it. And I recommend it. Definitely would watch. I've seen it several times, and I would love to watch it again in the future. I'm gonna give this an 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I was going to similarly give it an 8 out of 10. I like pretty much everything about this movie. I think it's one of the strongest films Marvel has made to date and one of the more poignant. There are a couple of issues I take with certain fleeting visual effects, but overall, this is a solid superhero film and a cut above most.
I think I can sit with y'all right there at the 8 to 8.5 mark. I like the only real disappointment I had was just the fact that Killmonger got killed off, because I would have loved to have seen more of him, even if he came back as like a repeat villain or assisting another villain or something like that. That's the only disappointment I had with it.
That's kind of how they brought back Thanos, right? They went back in time, and 2014 Thanos like came across what the Avengers were doing. So
Yeah.
and that's also how they brought back Gamora, and how they're having the Loki TV show. So you never know, man. Yeah,
I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
yeah.
His personality changed too when they brought Thanos back. Like 2014 Thanos didn't act the same way 2019 Thanos did.
He was more ruthless, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe something similar would happen with Killmonger. Like he might have a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, if the rumor is true, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe if they go back far enough and actually like take him back instead of abandoning him after his father dies, or don't even kill his father, bring both of them back to Wakanda. You know, that would be a good story actually if that's what they end up doing. But we'll see what happens. But yeah,
the only grime I would have with that is if they took him back before he got ruthless, that would also take away a lot of things that he did in training up to that moment too.
That's true.
That made him who he was, Killmonger. Yeah, but he was one of the best parts of the movie to me, Realm. So I understand your disappointment in him getting killed off. But yeah. So what would you give it though? You're dancing around 8 and 8.5. So which is it?
8.25.
Oh, come on, man. Really? All right, fine. If you really want to do that, we'll...
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, man, you never said we couldn't use fractions.
I didn't, but we already are. That's like more fractions, but fine. We can make that exception. But all right, Realms, we ain't done with you yet, because I think we are due.
Yep, it's that time.
Anime content.
Oh, yes. All right, so my next movie suggestion will be My Hero Academia movie, and it's called The Two Heroes. And essentially, it's gonna re-explain the beginning of the series, so it should still be able to make sense as a standalone. But essentially, it's a world where they were all human at first, but then next thing you know, people started to develop different quirks and different abilities to the point where they started to make a hero system. And a lot of heroes, they are heroes to, make money. And some heroes are just doing it just because they really want to, protect people. It's their dream, especially following behind the biggest hero, All Might. So that's essentially the gist.
Cool. All right. Definitely.
All right.
Yeah. I have not checked this one out before. So just to be clear, is this an anime movie or is it a movie-length mashup? Is it going to be a Chill with Realms movie-length mashup that you're going to put together?
This is an anime movie.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Sweet.
All the same. Looking forward to it. So, yeah. All right, great. So that'll be the next episode. So what is it called? What's the full movie title?
My Hero Academia, The Two Heroes.
My Hero Academia.
But I'll send you the link for it because I'm not sure where else you can watch it, but I know somewhere where you can watch it.
Cool. Yeah. Just hit us up whenever you're ready. Yeah. It's all good. But yeah.
I got it.
Thank you, Realms. Thank you, Jurassic Mark. That concludes.
You're welcome, good sir.
This episode of Movie Guys Improvise has concluded. You've been listening to the voices of
Chill with Realms,
Jurassic Mark,
and Faerhad Targaryen. Thank you all as well who have been tuning in to listen to us, and catch us again on the next anime episode.
We out.